What's going on, everybody? My name is Satya. Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to read for you guys chapter 1 of the famous Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. Now, this has been very important in India for millennia. It's one of many multitudinous books that I've read on my spiritual path. And, after reading all these different texts from different masters and traditions and teachers, the one that I want to share with as many people as possible is this one. Now, there's a few reasons for that. Before we dive into the chapter here, I just want to give you guys a bit of a preface, a preamble. So number one, it's short. So it's 18 chapters, yes, but on average, it's about 4 pages each. Okay. Number two is that it gives the path of karma yoga, about spirituality, how to do spirituality in the midst of worldly life. Okay. Which is something that, here in America, and, whoever speaks English, whoever's watching this, it's in modern times, like that's kind of the life we have. We have careers. There's not really much of a monastic culture here like there was in ancient India. Okay, so this book, the spirituality that's within this appeals to everybody. It's something that everybody can benefit from, that everybody can walk away with some beautiful insights from. Okay, so it's universally applicable. It's short. Number three, it's fun. It's fun to read. So as opposed to lengthy philosophical essay format like dense Buddhist texts or I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj, right? It's written in an easy to understand verbiage, at least in English translation format. Maybe the Sanskrit is less clear, but it's easy to understand. But also, it's written in a story format. It's contained within a frame story format. Okay, so the premise is that Krishna, the god Krishna, is speaking to Arjuna, which is, basically this book, it's not a standalone book. It's actually just an excerpt from a greater text called the Mahabharata. Okay, this is like the classic, the famous Sanskrit Indian epic poem called the Mahabharata. Okay, Bhagavad Gita, Song of the Lord, is a little extract from that. Okay, and the premise, as you guys will see, is that it's on a battlefield, and time kind of freezes. And Arjuna, he's having a whole moment. He's like, "What's the point of this battle? Why are we doing this? Those are our brethren over there." And the two warring sides are actually related to each other. Okay, that's the whole conundrum. That's why Arjuna doesn't want to fight. All right. And the cat is meowing. I'm going to try to ignore that. But yeah, so that's the premise. The bad guy is a blind king known as Dhritarashtra. Okay, a bit of a mouthful. And I'm telling you this because in chapter 1, this is one of my disclaimers. Chapter 1, there's a lot of Sanskrit names. Okay. It kind of gives like biblical, when they list and here's 30 generations of all these people that you're not going to remember and you don't really know why they matter. If you've ever read Tanakh, the Old Testament, or even the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, for example, it gives those vibes, and you can kind of your mind might glaze over and be like, oh, what does this matter? So 2 things about that. Number 1, the original audience of Mahabharata is already going to know who all these people are. It's going to have a relevance in a context when in the actual original context you're supposed to be reading this. Number 2, even for an English speaking audience who hasn't read that, these names actually have spiritual significance. When you delve deeper into the symbolism. And of course, the Sanskrit names have meaning as well. And I don't know them off the top of my head, but Yogananda, the famous Yogananda that everybody loves on YouTube in the spiritual community, including Steve Jobs. He wrote a beautiful, amazing commentary. It's a two-part series, two-volume series on commentary on this. Okay, and he goes into depth about like the symbolism of the characters. But just know that there's a meaning to it. Okay. Second disclaimer: we'll get this show on the road very soon. But I promise all of this is kind of essential for you to like receive chapter 1 and have it land properly, because everyone here has probably never read it before. You don't really know what's in it. You don't know why to care about it and all that. So yes, point number 2, disclaimer number 2 is that chapter number 1, it doesn't really have as much of the spiritual value, like the spiritual philosophy, as the rest of the text. It's setting the exposition. It's giving us the frame story, the setup. And yes, there is a lot of value you can get out of it. I would say it's just more subtle than the rest of the text, because the rest of the text is literally Krishna's advice to Arjuna about what to do, how to do spirituality, what in this context, in this specific context, what's the right course of action, what's the right mindset, what's the right practice. Okay, so it's very much a manual for spirituality. All right, and I think I covered all of the bases. Yeah, let's dive into this, and I promise chapter 2 onwards, I'll make these shorter. I'll just dive into the material, probably without much synopsis or summary. All right, so let's get started. All right, so chapter 1, this is the war within. That's this translator's name for the title, Eknath Easwaran, very affordable copy. He gives some commentary too. That's why it's so like thick compared to what I said about it being short. So good copy. The war within. All right. Now we start off with the blind king. Okay, sorry about the cat. We start off with the blind king, and actually a key thing that I didn't tell you guys is that this story that we're about to read is like, who's the narrator, right? It's actually Sanjaya. This is the advisor to the blind king, the king on the bad side, so to speak. His advisor has the gift of psychic sight, clairvoyance, and he can see, and he's recounting to the blind king exactly what happened on that battlefield. Okay, the king's like, hey, what happened? I can't see. I'm not there. So that's the context of this. All right, now we can dive into it. All right, Dhritarashtra, he says, "O Sanjaya, tell me what happened at Kurukshetra, the field of Dharma, where my family and the Pandavas gathered to fight." So the family, that's the bad side, the Pandavas are the good side, so to speak, with Arjuna. All right. Then Sanjaya says, having surveyed the forces of the Pandavas arrayed for battle, Prince Duryodhana approached his teacher Drona and spoke, "O my teacher, look at this mighty army of the Pandavas, assembled by your own gifted disciple, the son of Drupada. There are heroic warriors and great archers who are the equals of Bhima and Arjuna. Duryodhana, Virata, the mighty Drupada, Drishtaketu, Chaitanya, the valiant king of Kashi, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, the great leader Shaibya, the powerful Yudhamanyu, the valiant Uttamaujas, the son of Subhadra, in addition to the sons of Drupadi. All these command mighty chariots. O best of Brahmins, listen to the names of those who are distinguished among our own forces: Bhishma, Karna, and the victorious Kripa, Ashvathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta. There are many others too, heroes giving up their lives for my sake, all proficient in war and armed with a variety of weapons. Our army is unlimited and commanded by Bhishma. Theirs is small and commanded by Bhima. Let everyone take his proper place and stand firm, supporting Bhishma. Then the powerful Bhishma, the grandsire, oldest of all the Kurus, in order to cheer Duryodhana, roared like a lion and blew his conch horn. And after Bhishma, a tremendous noise arose of conches and cow horns and pounding on drums. Then Sri Krishna and Arjuna, who were standing in a mighty chariot, yoked with white horses, blew their divine conches. Sri Krishna blew the conch named Panchajanya, and Arjuna blew that called Devadatta. The mighty Bhima blew the huge conch Poundara. Yudhishthira, the king, the rightful king, the son of Kunti, blew the conch Ananta Vijaya. Nakula and Sahadeva blew their conches as well. Then the king of Kashi, the leading bowman, the great warrior Sikandi, Drishta Dyumna, Virata, the invincible Satyaki, Drupada, all the sons of Draupadi, and the strong-armed son of Subhadra joined in. And the noise tore through the heart of Duryodhana's army. Indeed, the sound was tumultuous, echoing throughout heaven and earth. Then, O Dhritarashtra, Lord of the earth, having seen your son's forces set in their places and the fighting about to begin, Arjuna spoke these words to Sri Krishna. O Krishna, drive my chariot between the two armies. I want to see those who desire to fight with me. With whom will this battle be fought? I want to see those assembled to fight for Duryodhana, those who seek to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra by engaging in war. And then Sanjaya, the advisor, says, thus Arjuna spoke, and Sri Krishna, driving his splendid chariot between the two armies, facing Bhishma and Drona and all the kings of the earth, said, Arjuna, behold, all the Kurus gathered together. And Arjuna, standing between two armies, saw fathers and grandfathers, teachers, uncles and brothers, sons and grandsons, in-laws and friends. Seeing his kinsmen established in opposition, Arjuna was overcome by sorrow. Despairing, he spoke these words. Arjuna says, O Krishna, I see my own relations here, anxious to fight, and my limbs grow weak, my mouth is dry, my body shakes, and my hair is standing on end. My skin burns and the bow Gandiva has slipped from my hand. I am unable to stand, my mind seems to be whirling. These signs bode evil for us. I do not see that any good can come from killing our relations in battle. O Krishna, I have no desire for victory or for a kingdom of pleasures. A kingdom or pleasures, sorry. Of what use is a kingdom or pleasure or even life if those for whose sake we desire these things, teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, uncles, in-laws, grandsons, and others with family ties, are engaging in this battle, renouncing their wealth and their lives? Even if they were to kill me, I would not want to kill them, not even to become ruler of the three worlds. How much less for the earth alone? O Krishna, what satisfaction could we find in killing Dhritarashtra's sons? We would become sinners by slaying these men, even though they are evil. The sons of Dhritarashtra are related to us, therefore we should not kill them. How can we gain happiness by killing members of our own family? Though they are overpowered by greed and see no evil in destroying families or injuring friends, we see these evils. Why shouldn't we turn away from this sin? When a family declines, ancient traditions are destroyed. With them are lost the spiritual foundations for life, and the family loses its sense of unity. Where there is no sense of unity, the women of the family become corrupt, and with the corruption of its women, society is plunged into chaos. Social chaos is hell for the family, and for those who have destroyed the family as well. It disrupts the process of spiritual evolution begun by our ancestors. The timeless spiritual foundations of family and society would be destroyed by these terrible deeds, which violate the unity of life. It is said that those whose family dharma has been destroyed dwell in hell. This is a great sin. We are prepared to kill our own relations out of greed for the pleasures of a kingdom. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to attack me in battle and kill me unarmed and unresisting. Then Sanjaya closes the chapter by saying, overwhelmed by sorrow, Arjuna spoke these words, and casting away his bow and his arrows, he sat down in his chariot in the middle of the battlefield. Om Tat Sat. So that's chapter 1. We'll get on to the rest of them. I would love to see who's interested in this. If you are interested, let me know by not only hitting like, but leaving a comment and be like, yeah, I'm interested to see where this is going. I like you as a narrator. It's more interesting than reading it myself. Whatever it is, just let me know. That'll fuel my motivation to continue. But besides that, if you're interested in this at any point and you want to know like more of the spiritual significance behind the material here, you want to go in depth, I've actually created a 19-part course, a class, a satsang class on this book as part of the Integrated Awakening Mentorship I Am, which is a vehicle for spiritual awakening, a program by Ra Netcher. Okay. And if you want to like investigate a little bit about what that might be, feel free to join our free spiritual learning platform, which has a bunch of transmission teachings and there's like a community element to it, all this stuff. I'll leave the link for that below. Join that and do some investigation. And also, I would invite you guys to check out, I do a free chakra meditation class on every Friday. And it's a special, unique type of meditation that Ra teaches as part of the I Am. And if you're interested in that, I will leave the link for registration for that below. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, like, comment, and subscribe. Again, my name is Satya. Happy to have you here. Happy and blessed to be reading this text and offering it to all those who need it. All right. I believe that is it. Ram Ram. Take care.